Just so you know, this show is about scary stuff. So don't say I didn't warn you guys. And remember, don't be scared.
Episode 55, Blind Rage. War Baby here with another episode of Murderous Minors.
When you hear the term runaway, you get all these negative connotations of some child who's wild and loose and unruly, and that was so not our child.
Does it surprise you to know that domestic violence has been steadily on the rise amongst young people, since always? No matter how much we try to raise our sons properly, our daughters continue to end up dead. According to the CDC, 1 in 11 high school girls and 1 in 9 high school boys experienced dating violence in 2018, and 26% of adult women and 15% of adult men who've experienced domestic violence first encountered it as a minor. There has scarcely been a time that I've advocated on social media for a missing young woman, only to have it end up that she disappeared willingly. It undoubtedly occurs, but not as often as we would hope. Mostly, secondary reports indicate that another young life has been taken in the name of love, leaving families and communities in ruins. When a juvenile kills the one they are supposed to have loved, 2 lives are lost, and with them often goes the hope of future happiness for their families. On this episode of Murderous Minors, we visit Virginia and next week North Carolina for 2 cases of teen girls who leave their homes and simply never return, leaving both families dealing with suspicion during an already trying time. Once the school day had ended for students of Mount Vernon High School, 16-year-old Jholie Moussa joined her twin sister Jholie in her bedroom to do her sister's hair. It was Friday, January 12, 2018, and the pair lived with their father in Mount Vernon, Virginia, while their mother resided in Texas. Sophomores in high school, the girls were always in contact with their mom, even though miles separated them. Jholie was actually using the Snapchat app, so the messages disappeared automatically, unlike traditional texts. Her sister didn't know who she was chatting with, and then Jholie was simply gone, telling her repeatedly that she'd be right back. The family's doorbell camera captured Jholie exiting the front door at 4:45 p.m. She is walking quickly and appears to be holding her cell phone up to her ear, as if she's taking a phone call. These frames of video are the last time we're able to see Jholie alive. The twins' father went out of town Friday and had arranged for his brother to stay at his house just in case. But both girls told their dad they would be sleeping over at friends' houses, so suspicions weren't at their highest until Saturday, when Jholie had not returned, and her sister had been unsuccessful in reaching her since she left. At 8 p.m., after leaving at 4:45 and telling her sister that she would be right back, Jholie received a text from Jholie's phone. It said that Jholie was now going 3 hours away to a party at Old Dominion University. Soon after that text message, Jholie's cell phone battery died and her phone was never turned on again. Her sister figured that since she had left the house without her charger, it was a possibility that Jholie was just having a hard time getting her hands on one. She tried contacting her twin all Friday night and into Saturday. After continuing to receive no response and seeing that Jholie's phone still wasn't on, Jholie relented and let her uncle know what was going on. All along, the twins' father and uncle thought Jholie had spent the night at a friend's house. Once they realized what the actual situation was, police were notified and the girl's father began making arrangements to return home immediately. Police were concerned but reluctant to issue an alert or consider Jholie endangered because they had proof she left the house of her own free will. The Fairfax County Police Department maintained that Jholie was immediately entered into the missing persons database, but records show she had been put into the National Crime Information Center, or NCIC database, as a runaway juvenile. Based on the facts of that case, there is nothing that indicates that Moussa is in any danger. They said after interviewing Jholie's family 4 times and contacting everyone in her inner circle. Those who knew Jholie expressed that it was out of character for her to be away from home for an extended period of time.
We communicate all the time, like all the time. So the fact that I haven't heard anything from my child, that's not normal. That's not normal at all. It's just not normal. You know, part of me wants to say, oh yeah, well she's just acting like a teenager, but this isn't her. This isn't her MO. This isn't how she acts, so I can't help but worry.
When friends were interviewed, none had spoken with her and all agreed that this behavior was uncharacteristic of the girl they knew. None of Jholie's friends knew where she was or anything about the party she had texted about. On Monday, January 15th, 2018, Fairfax County Police asked for the public's assistance in locating Jholie Moussa. That day as well, the Major Crimes Bureau joined the investigation, looking into cell phone information and social media accounts for any sign of use. Many kids and teens are rarely far from their phones, making the silence on Jholie's end an ominous sign. The FBI joined the efforts on January 17th, 5 days after the last time Jholie was seen or heard from. The final call to Jholie's phone came from the cell phone of a 12-year-old neighborhood boy, whom the twins' father called for answers. He too had been poring over his daughter's cell phone logs since he had access through their account.
So the last person who actually called my daughter was this boy's cell phone, but it wasn't him who made the call. It was some guy who was playing basketball who came up to him and said, hey, can I use your phone? I mean, that tells me that whoever was calling her purposely didn't want to use either his own phone or, you know, was trying to bypass being identified. I mean, that's plain simple. I mean, the odds that a teenager doesn't have their phone on them at that time, what's that odds?
He said, is it cool if I could borrow your phone? Yeah, it's cool, and then I let him borrow the phone. And then he walked away, he gave me my phone, and then he walked away.
Peggy Fox of local WUSA 9 reported extensively on this case, including a Facebook Live she did with both parents and Jholie's twin 3 days after she went missing. Her mother was on the phone, fielding texts and messages and keeping up to date with news online. Her sister paced frantically between tearful anger and tearful despair. Their father had the phone locating app pulled up on an iPad, constantly checking for any activity on Jholie's phone. It was during that interview that Jholie's father described the situation regarding the neighbor boy's phone, but later on, he mentioned that his daughter had a troublesome ex.
I know that she had an ex-boyfriend that she was going through some issues with, and but she ended up, you know, that issue kind of, he's been talked to by the police, by myself. He doesn't fit the description of the guy who used the cell phone. We're hoping that the police doesn't rule him out, because either if he was not the person who used the phone to call my daughter, maybe he had something to do with it. Who knows?
Once the investigation began and friends and family were questioned, detectives quickly gained an uneasy perspective into the teenager's relationship with on-again, off-again boyfriend, 17-year-old Nebiyu Ebrahim. There had been 2 previous incidents that they kept hearing about. The first incident occurred the previous month and involved Nebiyu slapping and choking Jholie to the point that she blacked out. He had the audacity to attack her in front of her own home, and he thought she was dead. She told police that he, quote, wouldn't let her break up with him. He was prosecuted and expelled from Mount Vernon High School, and a no-contact order was put in place. Nebiyu was transferred to Bryan Alternative School, where he couldn't play basketball. which he despised. He blamed Jholie for the results of his own actions, and he grew to despise her too. In addition to continuously stalking and harassing her, he strangled her unconscious a second time, but her parents and police weren't aware that this had happened. Some of Jholie's friends knew, though, and they let police know as much when questioned. Detectives knew that the next person they needed to speak to was Nebiyu Ebrahim, whom Jholie's twin said was her sister's first boyfriend. She said that things were good and her sister fell in love, but that Nebiyu soon began hitting her and calling her a whore. Apologies followed before the cycle began again. When detectives spoke to him on January 18th, he didn't hold back. He claimed not to know where Jholie was, saying that they had once dated, but their relationship had grown cold. He said they no longer spoke, but described to police the unreported incident of domestic violence, resulting in a shocking consequence. Even though Jholie was missing, police were successful in having felony assault charges filed, and Nebiyu was arrested and taken into custody and convicted. He was placed in juvenile detention for choking Jholie, and on January 30th, police released that they had an unnamed person of interest in Jholie's disappearance. Not much was heard about the person of interest for the next 7 months while Nebiyu served out his sentence. While some investigators were dealing with him, others continued their search, including nearby Woodlawn Park on Manor Drive, walking distance from both teens' homes. The Skyview basketball courts where the mysterious phone call was made is adjacent to it, and the area was searched multiple times.
Detectives and officers came here today to try and find Jholie alive.
On their fourth pass through the woods surrounding Woodlawn Park, police discovered Jholie's body 14 days after she walked out of her front door on Sonia Court and into oblivion. Her phone had never been turned back on. Cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation and blunt force trauma. Jholie's family was beyond devastated. The twins had never been apart for more than 24 hours. They had searched Woodlawn Park themselves the very weekend Jholie went missing and unknowingly stood less than 200 feet from her makeshift grave.
We as a police department, from the moment we received the call, never stopped to find Jholie. We entered her into the missing juvenile system, which then has national and regional reach. As the major said, we worked with our federal, state, and local jurisdictions in this area to find Jholie, and we worked very hard.
Just hours after his release from juvenile custody on August 30th, 2018, 17-year-old Nebiyu Ebrahim was charged with first-degree murder in Jholie Moussa's death. He provided detectives with a detailed 5-hour-long interview during which he walked them through his version of the events of January 12th. According to Nebiyu, it was he that was Snapchatting with Jholie after school, and when she left her house, she left to meet him in secret at Woodlawn Park. He was angry because she had told him that she was going to a party later that night, a party he wasn't allowed to attend. He claimed his intention was to argue with her. Nebiyu complained angrily to Jholie that he couldn't do those kinds of things since he'd gotten into trouble because of her. He described to police how they were walking along a path traversing Woodlawn Park when Jholie playfully nudged him and stumbled, and how he grabbed her in what he called a, quote, MMA-style chokehold. One arm outstretched and bent toward his body, he even reenacted his movements on the confession tape.
You know, you're in the hit of passion, you're in a blind rage. I started choking her out more and more to the point where it was just like I just kept choking it to the point you can't call and be like, I just killed somebody.
Jholie lost consciousness, at which point Nebiyu put her on the ground. Instead of attempting to revive her or calling for help, he strangled her with his bare hands. Jholie was still alive, Nebiyu noticed, before pulling her into a sitting position